Ben?
He told me that he was going to be in this class, but yeah, I spoke to him, but not here.
Okay. We don't have to say not here for the people who aren't here. Just don't say here, and that'll be fine.
He's the only one I know.
Okay.
Because I spoke to him and all that. He said he was going to be here.
Okay. What did I just say? Mark Kellogg? All right. Amanda? Mike Panko?
Here.
Alan?
I am here.
Well done. David?
Here.
And I'm here. All right. You will notice that I am recording the class. The recording isn't quite the quality of it is when I'm in the BU 105 room. It's not, it's done with a camera up there, and that might be the mic. I'm not sure. But at least it gives you an idea of what was gone over if you have to miss a class. The videos will be broken down into parts, so each class session will be like more than one video. So I think it breaks it down like in a half-hour videos, the recording device, however that is. What I want to do is I want to start off by just going over general class stuff, and then we'll get into the material itself. If I'm not mistaken, I've had everyone in a class before. Is that correct? All right, I'm pretty sure. Many of you, it's over the summer even, so I have a fighting chance of remembering that. All right, and I take it you're all familiar with Angel, so we'll just talk about how the class is organized, how this class is organized. Let me pull up, and we'll hit the high points of this. All right. Most of what goes on in this class, Angel-wise, takes place in the Content tab. You can certainly use Communicate, and you can look up your grades using the reporting feature, I believe. We'll talk a fair amount of time about the syllabus today. Copyright, Fair Use, and Education is a handout that discusses how you may use things such as images, etc., in your web pages. The main lesson of this is that we need to respect copyright law. So in an educational context, you have more flexibility than you would if you were just doing even a personal project, or certainly if you were doing a professional project. Essentially, don't take too much from any given source and give credit, and you should be okay. I have a folder for assignments. And by the end of class, we'll look at the first assignment. All right. And then there's a discussion forum that allows you to post questions between classes that you think would benefit everyone in the class. I do urge you to check Angel a couple times a week, even like between classes. I post announcements to Angel if there's if there's an unresolved question from class. If someone asks a question I don't have a good answer for, a lot of times I'll do some research and post an answer to it. In addition, if there's a problem with any of your assignments or any other situation, I'll post that. In the unlikely event that I'm going to miss a class, I'll post it there too. There is a class in September I believe I'm going to miss. I'm not sure which one. I'll have to remember. Yes?
Do we meet next Monday?
No, we do not. That's right. That was surprising to me, but yeah, it's Labor Day already.
Is that the class you're going to miss?
No, no, because there's no there's a difference. This is getting back to databases. A difference between an empty string and a null value. That's a null value. There's no class there, so I'm not missing a class.
I just wanted to make sure, though.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. A valid and fair question. We'll come back to that, though. But the bottom line is check Angel between that. I do post announcements. And it's a good way to ask questions. I definitely encourage you to ask questions. This is a small class. You know, there's plenty of opportunity for you to ask questions. And as such, you know, I definitely encourage it. You know, there's a instructor adage that if one person has a question, there's a good chance other people in the class will have a question. So as such, you know, 2 people in the class having a question, that's a third of the class. All right. If it's something that I think is best addressed individually during lab, I'll just tell you. You know, maybe it's something related to something you're specifically working on that isn't really relevant for the rest of the class. The point is it's no harm to ask. At the very worst, I'll simply tell you, well, you know, we don't, you know, we'll discuss it during lab. The discussion forum is a good place for you to post questions, though, that you think will benefit the whole class to hear. You certainly can email me as well, and I encourage you to do that. One thing that is difficult about programming compared to other classes, at least I think it's one thing that's difficult compared to other classes, is you can really get hung up and stuck on something and not make any progress until you get a question resolved. You know, I don't think there's a parallel in an English paper. If you're having trouble wording something, you can simply skip that paragraph and go on to the next paragraph. Whereas if you're doing something and it doesn't work right in a script, you know, your page just won't load. It'll just sit there. All right. In which case you may really be spinning your wheels until you get it resolved. So because of that, I encourage you to ask questions between classes. I do a pretty good job, I think, checking my email pretty regularly, and can get back to you pretty quickly on that. We'll touch base again about the first assignment towards the end of class. I do want to take a look at the syllabus, and I won't spend probably as much time as I would in another class simply because all you folks have had me before in one class or another. One of the major things we'll work on this semester is you folks will help teach me how to work Windows 8, because we're on Windows 8 in this room, which I had zero experience on until, what day was it? I don't know, the day last week. One of my friends had, their kids had a laptop and had trouble doing something. And it's kind of fun going back to being a novice before. You have no idea where anything is. Right. I don't really like Windows 8. Have any of you used it at all? What's your opinion?
It's okay. I mean, if there's ways to work around if you don't like it. I mean, you can still do everything.
Yeah, I actually discovered that way, I think, in 2006, and it was called buying a Mac. All right? Right. So that's the easiest way I found around it. Yeah, I know what you mean now. I mean, even like if you go into desktop view, that's kind of more like your
Yeah, I have Windows 8 on here on this Mac,
right.
Only because I use like Visual Studio.
Right, sure.
So that's all I really use it for.
Yeah.
But other than that,
it seems to me they wanted to turn your computer into a tablet.
Yeah, it's exactly what it was.
Yeah, and you know,
I don't like
anyhow.
using my mouse, so I hate it.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Took away my start button.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You're bringing back a very bogus start button you're saying in this version.
So what we'll do for the most of today is criticize Windows 8. And we'll pick up the material the rest of the class. Yeah, on the top of the syllabus is a list of ways to get a hold of me. Few things to keep in mind. You know, I have my regular email. You can also send email through Angel. It's generally better to email me as opposed to sending me voicemail. I check my email pretty regularly throughout the day, as opposed to checking my voicemail, you know, much more rarely, especially like over the weekends. So you're generally better off sending me emails. My office hours, I haven't determined them yet. They will be effective starting next week, so there's no office hours formally this week. In addition to our own lab session, and this is a 4-credit-hour class, so this is a little bit different as far as the lab and lecture goes. The lecture is actually 1 hour and 15 minutes, so the lecture starts at 5:15 and runs until 6:30, and then the lab starts at 6:30 and runs until 7:20. All right. But in addition to our lab period, you're welcome to come in on other classes' lab periods. I have a lab Monday through Thursday. I have a day class and an evening class. This is obviously the evening class for Monday and Wednesday, but I also have an evening class on Tuesday and Thursday. I also have a day class both Monday, Wednesday, and Tuesday, Thursday. So I'll post those. In the meantime, if I haven't posted the times and locations of the lab and you did want to come in the lab, you can contact me and I can give you that. And then by the same token, I invite people from other classes into this lab. So you might see someone that's not one of us here. It might be from an online class or whatever. I think it works better all the way around to give people the opportunity to come on in for that. By all means, take advantage of that if you wish. You can make other appointment times if the office hours aren't agreeable. I know this being an evening class, a lot of you folks might work, so because of that, it might be inconvenient for you to come in. But I can make other arrangements if you need to see me about anything in particular. Here's a whole list of stuff, which is the descriptions. Oh, nice. It scrolls from side to side instead of up and down. Things that we are interested in and focus on. Most of the other stuff you can pretty much read on your own. I will sort of fast forward to the end, and we'll talk about some of the relevant stuff. Some of the stuff is echoing what I said earlier about this being your class, and as such, if you have any questions or problems, please let me know. Bunch of college policies. My policy on late work. I'm flexible on late work to a point. I'm very flexible when I feel the person's been working with me and showing up to lab and sending me questions and so on. I can be very open to not deducting in that case. Because after all, if you're working on it and you're working hard and you're plugging away and you get it down, but 2 days after the deadline, what do I care? I want you to take this stuff out of the class with you and remember it for a long time. So the fact that you get it a couple days after the deadline I define really doesn't bother me. However, if you're habitually late or you're chronically late, that's a sign that maybe you need to do something. If you're having trouble with the material, you need to talk to me, or maybe you need to spend a little bit more time on it, and so on. All right. Let's do, as they say, work smart in this class. More so even than working hard. While working hard is obviously essential, working effectively and knowing when you're in trouble and need to ask questions, I think, is a valuable skill to have. So work hard, but also work smart. Maybe that's what I wanted to say. Your grades are comprised of a total of 3 quizzes. Quizzes are pretty short and easy, I think. I realize that's like the dentist saying it's not going to hurt, right? It doesn't hurt him, probably not. All right, so the quizzes are pretty easy and short. There will be pretty much weekly lab assignments. On occasion, I might combine a couple assignments into like a larger assignment, but generally speaking, there'll be weekly assignments, shorter weekly assignments. And then there'll be a final exam. All right? One thing about this class is, in addition to knowing how to do something, it's important to understand like the rationale of why you would do something. For example, and I can't necessarily tell that from the coding. I may ask you to code or to do in a lab, a website that has a separate mobile and desktop version. And you may know technically how to code that. But to really understand, when that's a better approach than simply creating one site that's responsive, all right, that's something I can't tell from your coding. So I'll ask you questions about it to make sure that you have that insight. Here is the schedule, and the schedule is pretty, is pretty flexible, or how do I want to say this? It is not carved in stone. It is subject to change and all that. So if we need to spend more time on a given topic, we will. Notice that the schedule has 3 columns: the week, the material that we're going to cover in the textbook, and then what's due that week. All right. There's nothing due this week. All right. Your first assignment, which I will assign this week, is due next week, and the assignments are due the Wednesday of the week that's mentioned. So, for example, the first assignment that you have today will be due next Wednesday. So whatever that is, September 4th. All right. It's a good idea to have read the material in advance. That way you can sort of have the basics down, and we can really focus maybe on the more problematic or more questionable sort of material here. One other thing to keep in mind is I don't think it does anyone any good if I simply cover page by page of the book. All right. I had an instructor like that in college once. Turn to the diagram on page 80. Take a look at it. Does anyone have any questions over the diagram on page 80? And that was like the class for an hour, 3 days a week or something like that. And, it drove me up a wall, and it couldn't have been fun for him either. All right. The point is you all can read. The textbook is good. The textbook is liable to have things that confuse you, just as I'm liable to say things that confuse you. But the combination of those two things hopefully will give you a better picture than just one or the other. So just listening to the lectures, just reading the book, doing both of them hopefully will give you a more well-rounded. You do have the advantage of me, is you can always ask me for clarification, whether it's over something I've said or something that's contained in the book. So that's really, I think, some of the benefit to doing that. So hopefully what I'm doing isn't in conflict with what's in the book, but it won't necessarily parallel it exactly. All right. Question. This was inadvertently copied from my other syllabus, so ignore that line. I just noticed that now.
This is a pretty advanced class.
Yeah. Any questions about any of this stuff? All right, on to the material proper. All right. My aim today is to sort of sketch out the roadmap as far as the mobile world goes. All right. It should be clear to anyone the importance of mobile that is skyrocketed over the past several years. And, really with the advent of the iPhone and then later the iPad and all the Android devices, really has gone through the ceiling. You see varying estimates of the percentage of web traffic that is from a mobile versus from a desktop, and that number is only increasing, and certainly at some point is going to exceed it. All right. I've had people tell me they don't have a computer. They have an iPad, or they do just about everything through their iPhone, iPad, Android device, whatever. So what I want to do is I want to sort of lay out the map for this, because there's a variety of approaches an organization will take. If you're an organization, let's say, and you've never had any sort of mobile presence, if you've just had a website, all right, obviously, you know, someone's heard of mobile, and you're going to want to get your organization going in that direction pretty quick. You know, it's probably already, you know, you're probably already a little bit behind, but you want to get into the mobile world pretty quick. Well, you have some choices, and the choices we're going to talk about, keep a couple things in mind. First of all, that this is not a perfect world. All right. Second thing is that no one has a crystal ball to sort of know the direction the industry is going to go in the future. So a lot of folks are sort of hedging their bets and developing what we might call, you know, the same sort of thing redundantly. So let's keep those things in mind. All right. So if you want your organization to have a mobile presence, effectively you have two main choices. All right. And again, we'll talk about this in a minute here, but you have two paths that you can take. One of them is the path of an app. And one of them is the path of a mobile website. This class is obviously focused on this, so we're going to spend most of our effort talking about that. Apps we're going to talk about so that we sort of understand them, understand the advantages and disadvantages, and we might talk a little bit more about them fairly late in the semester, but most of our work is going to be on mobile websites. Is everyone clear what I mean by an app versus a mobile website? Can someone describe what the difference between an app and a mobile website is? Yes?
An app is like actual software that you download to your phone, and it's
Okay.
kind of written in native code for the actual
Okay.
device.
An app is something that you must install on your device. How do you access a mobile website then?
Through a mobile browser.
Through a browser, right. So, the app requires you to install software. The browser does not require you, or the browser-based solution or the web solution does not require you. It only requires you to have a browser, which just about every device is going to have. All right. Another difference was mentioned, and that was the difference of, said the word, native code. Let's just describe the differences at first, then we'll come back to advantages and disadvantages. Howdy. Which class are you looking for?
CCNA 1.
This is not that class.
Thank you.
All right. If apps are written in native code, first of all, what do we mean by native code?
It's like specific code for the actual platform that you're using. For argument's sake,
Right.
iPhone is Objective-C, Android is Java.
Okay. The code is specific to the device, which means that an app written for iPhone won't necessarily work on an Android device and vice versa. What about mobile websites? What are they written in?
HTML,
Yeah.
CSS, Java.
Typically, they are written in what are called the web standard languages. So they would be written in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Or they might employ server-side scripting on the server to create this language of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So right off the bat, we should notice one thing. What does it seem to have more work to do? Develop an app for iPhone and Android, or develop a mobile website for Android and iPhone? Develop the app. Because in essence, you would have to develop two apps. All right? They're installed on the device, they're written on a specific code, so you could not install an iPhone app on an Android, you could not install an Android app on an iPhone. Because both the Android and iPhone have browsers associated with them, browsers know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you should be in good shape, all right, by simply having a web standard solution. Any mobile device that has a browser, that is every mobile device, all right, should be able to access it, all right. And it gets even better than that, because we're talking, you know, we're sort of high-tech people here, and we're probably, most of us probably have smartphones and mobile devices and so on. Maybe not all of us, but probably many of us do. But even if you have an old-fashioned flip phone, I mean, my old, I don't even remember what it was called, from Verizon, where you flip the phone open, had a web browser on it, right? It wasn't the most elegant web browser in the world, but it understood HTML at least on some level, all right? Whereas, did anyone write apps for that? Oh, I don't know, maybe someone did, but not too many people did, all right? So, things like BlackBerry, things like Windows phones. The mobile website covers those, all right, more so than that. Any other differences between apps and mobile websites?
Local storage.
Local storage?
An app usually has more rights to local storage than
An app usually has more rights to local storage. There's sort of a corollary that can go along with that.
It wouldn't have to be on the internet for the apps.
All right? Wouldn't have to be connected. Because again, the application lives on your device, whereas this, you're browsing the web.
How about updating? When you update an app, you have to push out an update that the user has to install with the website.
Needs updated.
Just update it.
Now, Android and iPhone may have made that task a lot easier than it might have been in the past, but that's still something. I thought I saw your hand up, Amanda?
Oh, you got it.
Okay, good. Sort of a corollary to this one is that these, because they're written specific for that device, can sort of more easily integrate with other features of the device. There's code specific to iPhones. That code knows iPhones, right? And therefore it can do things that iPhones can do. Whereas a more generic solution such as HTML, the advantage is that it can be geared towards everyone, a broader audience. The disadvantage is it's not written custom for anyone in particular. All right? Now, do keep in mind that we're speaking in vast generalities. All right? We're going to find some things that you can do scripting-wise that sort of mitigate some of these things. Yes?
Could you run an app like on the cloud, like run a Windows app on an iPhone on the cloud, like Excel spreadsheet, let's say, on the cloud, or an Outlook calendar that's online? Could you look at the app? Could you run that on your iPhone?
Well, remember there's the, what's the old saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's a lot of things that you could do with that. That more than likely would go through some sort of mobile website. Or there would be an iPhone app written to communicate, to talk to the server. So it would sort of probably fall into one of these two categories of things. Either there'd be a web front end for the app that was running out on the server, or there would be sort of a iPhone